Right, the art market. Let me start by introducing my esteemed panelists. On my immediate right, we have Alain Servais, who is an incredibly active and knowledgeable collector from Brussels. I don't know any other collector who travels to as many art fairs and biennales as Alain. And I don't know an art collector who is as opinionated as Alain, which is great. Next we have Elena Bonanno, who is going to lead Thaddaeus Ropac's new gallery in Milan, which is opening in September.
Yes.
And she is a very experienced... Sorry, Karen.
No, mid-September.
Yeah, and she is an extremely experienced gallerist who worked for several top galleries in London beforehand and has now moved to Milan. And then at the end of the row, we have Pearl Lam, who the Financial Times described as the powerhouse of China's art world. And over a period of 3 decades or something like that, she has been a sort of single-handed force of globalization in introducing Chinese contemporary art to the Western world and creating a dynamic trade and interchange of ideas between those two worlds. I was going to have a completely different brief introduction, but Alain said my approach is complete rubbish, so I'm going to do something different. And I was going to speak slightly personally. I've done this sort of art market session about 4 times now, and I've always slightly felt it's a sort of graveyard slot, because it comes after so many sessions where extremely eminent and brilliant people have spoken very eloquently about art, the role of art, museums, how art is going to change the world. I've come, 3/4 of an hour after Antony Gormley, which is one of the most sort of eloquent expositions of why art should exist in the world, and artists that I've heard for a very, very long time, and I'm sure you have as well. But what I would like to say is that the market matters. Giotto didn't work for free. Leonardo da Vinci didn't work for free. And Antony Gormley doesn't work for free. Now, what I want to do is ask the panelists why the market matters, why it's important in a wider sense for the world of art of which this conference is part. Let's start with you, Alain. Why is the market important?
You have the same reaction as I do, because when I was listening to activists and biologists and artists, and even admiring the fantastic job of those deaf language translator, which are really admirable, I was wondering, why did they invite a useless capitalist?
Good point.
A guy. So I said to myself, then I recognize as well that even when I was listening to Theaster Gates, who was talking about the fact that many of his friends were losing their job right now in the US because of the Trump DEI situation. Alvaro Barrington was talking in the same way about how to make the link between what he called the art industry and what he was doing in the community. Then I realized that in fact the art market was present in all the talks that were given today, because one thing changed dramatically in the last 20 years is that, for a stupid reason, at the moment, everywhere in the world except the Middle East, the public authorities decided that culture was for the wealthy, and that the wealthy should take care of the funding of culture by themselves. So everywhere in the world there's decrease in the amount of money available for art and culture in any of this form. So of course, caveat emptor, meaning that the void must be filled, and it's the private sector that moved in. Private sector in many different forms. And so I give a few examples, practical examples, because I hate to speak theoretically. So you will hear a lot of examples and names from me today. The Venice Biennial, everybody knows it's the most prestigious event in the world, but every insider knows that there is no money for the artists to pay, the artists to travel, even to fund the works most of the time, and the galleries have to step in. Same problem with the museums today. The museums are out of money everywhere in the world, from the Tate Modern to any museums around the world. And of course, there's also sometimes blames that are made to galleries for stepping in and funding and taking, of course, some advantages because they are private institutions and they need to have a return on what they're investing. So that's the way it is right now, and this is why the market is central to everything we've been discussing. Now the question is the art market doing a proper job or not? And that's maybe what we'll be discussing today.
We'll move on to those details in a minute. Anna, why do you think the market is important?
I think it's always been important, and it's always been mostly privately funding. I mean, from the Medici to the Thyssen's to the biggest family. So I don't think there is any changes. The only shift, I would say, is nowadays the big galleries have a big role because there's less funding from the governments, and so we have to step in order to give platforms to the artists that we are building their legacy. That's what I think, but it hasn't changed.
But there's always a problem with it. We talk about the big galleries, but there's somehow a prejudice about these commercial institutions somehow is a less pure form of patronage, isn't it?
But that again, it was the same thing in the 60s when Leo Castelli was very close to the MoMA. I mean, story repeats. I don't think it has really changed. It's just different names.
Pearl, what do you think?
The same thing, and I support what Elena said. Who's going to pay the artist if there's no art market? I mean, good old days, you have patronage. You have, aristocrat having a patronage over the artist. But today, you need the will to be, you need the oil will. So you need to create an art market for the artist to create the work, and also, so you need to talk. I mean, you need to create some credibility for the artist as well. It's both things has to work together.
Okay. Well, we've established why the art market is important, but now we have the issue of the art market is in a problematic phase at the moment, if it is a phase. Last night in Sotheby's, this week of the big so-called marquee sales, the biennial series of sales at Sotheby's, Christie's and Phillips, and the most highly estimated work was a Giacometti bronze bust, and it was estimated at $70 million, and it failed to sell. And this was, in symbolic terms, a pretty bad sign for the top end of the art market. And then, if we look back over the last couple of years, sales have been in decline for last 2 years. The art market is in a difficult place. What's gone wrong, Alain?
That's interesting difference of view. What I call the art market stakeholders, or the one that are part of it, say everything's fine, nothing changed in the Medici. I heard the same arguments even about the NFT. The NFT guys were saying, it exists since the Medici and the whole thing. But I'm also listening to Anthony Gormley, and one of his talks, he said, art is today is commodified. I'm agreeing that art is commodified today, because if you go to an art fair today, 90% of the art is looking exactly the same. It's not different. It's one name to the other. So the way the evolution, and when you were comparing about Leo Castelli, just in terms of figures, at the time, even in current dollars, because it's easy to speak about, it was the same, except that at the time, the art market was as big as this. I started collecting 30 years ago, the art market was like this. Now the art market is a story of roughly $60 billion. At the time, it was maybe 20 or something like this. So it's in.
Sorry, Alain, can I jump in there? But as a point continue.
So
sorry, can I just interrupt? The thing is that the art market over the last, since 2011 though, has flatlined.
Exactly.
And that's, carry on.
So, and why did it flatline? Why is, in fact, because we're talking about crisis recently, but the art market is flat since 2010. Some people would say, oh, it doesn't matter. But then you ask yourself, why are other rich men toys increasing in terms of volumes, like watches or cars or real estate? Why is the art market stable? And it's an important question because artists need to be funded. I think one of the problems is, and I'm coming from finance, is that when I entered the art world, I was overwhelmed the last 15 years by the fact that people pretending, there's a whole industry pretending that the art world is an investment. And it appeared very clearly that it's not functioning as an investment in terms of transparency, in terms of consistency, because something that one of the best kept secret of the art market is that you have some works, Damien Hirst is selling for $1 million in a gallery, but you can get the same in an auction house for $300,000. In the luxury good industry, they don't accept that there's such a difference between prices and the thing. Or, I'm thinking, just an example, because I see the wonderful Jeff Koons yesterday, but it said that the Hulk was selling for 3.3 million at Frieze, but yesterday one good exemplary sold for 1.5. So, there's such a big difference in price between primary and secondary market, but it does not exist if you want to make an investment. So people sometimes buy for 3 million and they see something coming for even less, because it happened to me that I bought a David Douar that was selling for 30,000 on a Fair Arco, and I paid $1,000 at Philips for a very good work. So one of the problems is that people don't believe in it. So suddenly the hot money went out of the art world, and that's it's stagnating in the last few years. The second problem is ethics.
Let's move on before we move. Elena, you're about to open a very prestigious gallery in Milan. Now, Milan has, over the last, 5 years, well, since Brexit, has changed and become a much more dynamic, more international center, I believe. Wealthy people have moved in. A taxi driver told me that there are now 27 billionaires.
Yes, I was asking you who told you that.
Yeah, it's a taxi. Taxi drivers know about this stuff.
They know a lot of things, the taxi drivers.
That 27 billionaires are living in Milan. Now, was this a factor in Thaddaeus' thinking that you should set up a gallery in
So you mean that I have to chase the 27 billionaires?
Well,
now?
often art chases, to be fair, art chases.
No, we
well.
haven't. We didn't have that data given by a taxi driver.
You hadn't spoken to that cab driver?
No, I haven't spoken to the same taxi driver.
Yeah.
So we based our strategy on other factors.
Such as?
Such as, well, Italy always been the art crib. I mean, I don't want to sound pompous, but Italy's Italy. Wherever you go, you don't need to be in Milano. You can go to Pavia, to Parma, to everywhere. I mean, you have, and Thaddaeus has been very active, institutionally wise, in Italy for his rosters of artists. And we're very much of a European gallery, so I think the choice was very natural as a next step. Milano is probably the most European city in Italy, not just geographically, but also the dynamic. It's a very, very, has a buzz, always had.
But you're the first major international gallery to set up a branch in Milan in recent years. Do you think others will follow?
Well, I hope so.
Okay.
We believe in collaboration, why not?
Okay.
There is room for everybody. No, absolutely.
Okay.
And it has the wealth, which,
Utterly.
supports our sector, going back to your first question. So,
Pearl, what about China and Asia? In recent years, it's been such a driver of the expansion of the art market, driven so many high prices at auction. Now, as has been well documented, the Chinese economy has stuttered to a certain extent in terms of growth. What's happening now? What's
I think in China, the biggest thing is, let's talk about these international art, right? Any international art, especially from America, last year you have to pay a tariff of 12%, and last week was 155%, and yesterday they came out with 25% tariff coming in. Who's going to show any of these? American artists in America?
Is it the uncertainty surrounding these tariffs?
The uncertainties, of course, in general, the market is the economy is bad. We have a property crisis. We have a control of capital control. That means that you basically cannot pay outside China. You have to pay everything within China. So that's very difficult to move money outside China, and also in low consumption and employment. So basically it is a very bad economy. But at the same time, the technology is just go haywire.
Sure.
This is the conflict between the two. So with the bad economy, and people are very reluctant to spend. If they want to spend, if they want to buy art, they won't buy in China today.
Okay.
Because they don't want to show that they're buying. They won't want to go to an auction to show that they are actually spending money. They don't want the tax bureau to chase after them.
Okay.
So of course, Hong Kong was the other major part that you do transaction in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has the best infrastructure. So you have all the people from Korea. Koreans also come to Hong Kong because of the tax.
Freeport.
People, collectors coming to Hong Kong, and all these,
But one of the key drivers of the extraordinary prices paid for at auction for young artists was Asian bidding. Has that kind of frothy speculation, that seemed to evaporate, that Asian bidding? Will that come back or not?
It is, you have to see in different generations. The generations which was they all studied from abroad, they went back home. In the 20s to early 30s, they only buy international artists. So whatever America is selling, they buy the same artist. And they usually would buy outside, would collect outside China. Because when it comes into China, import tax, VAT, whatever, they would stop it. But today it's less because the parents has less money, that they want to keep cash.
Okay. Anna, going back to this key issue of art for investment, we've talked about this quite a lot. Is one of the reasons the market has cooled is that there has been a crisis of confidence in the whole idea of art being a good investment among wealthy people?
Yes, because there's a mentality today of speculation in every part of society. Everything that is speculative, whether it's cryptocurrencies, NFT, Ferraris coming out of the garage, it's the same story. But the second element, which I think is problematic in the art world, that I think should be taken care of by the industry itself, is ethics. Nobody from the stakeholders, again, speaks about ethics, but I will mention a few names you know very well. Yves Bouvier, Ingo Fenbrick, Lisa Schiff, Ingo Aschermann in Switzerland and Germany. I personally had to intervene in different cases. I had the case of a gallery in Spain that asked me to intervene to have a collector, a very well-known and respected collector, to pay for works that he took delivery of, and suddenly he didn't want to return any calls for more than 1 year, and I had to call him and say, you cannot do that, you need to pay the works. Or I had to intervene for an artist that had a gallery in Belgium, and the gallery didn't want to return the works without the artist paying a kind of a fee because he had been shown for twice in an art fair. So the gallery said, okay, you can leave, but you need to pay me such and such for the things. So the number of cases like this are numerous, and nobody's talking really so much about it. But I say very often that one of the reasons is not that, of course, it's not the case for everyone, it's only a minority, but this minority should be cleaned up by the industry.
But is it, sorry to interrupt, but isn't one of the great attractions of the art world is that it's unregulated? That's what brings in this money.
I don't think it's an attraction. You can think that going around the West with your cold guns and shooting on the Indians and everything is quite fun. But if you want to grow and create a stable funding for the art, which is, let's go back to what I said. It's not about the art market. It's not about the speculators. It's not about the galleries. It's about funding culture. And if you want to really create a stable funding of a culture, you need to have a minimum of ethics. And I had even the case, again, I was in Berlin, I was talking to a major museum director, he was talking to collectors, and I said, when he was finished his meeting, I said, what do you prefer? You prefer collectors or artists? He said, artists. I don't want to speak about artists anymore, because I'm so tired of those artists that go on a stage and speak about helping the other, being nice and being open to humanity and wanting, and then they treat the people that are hanging their works like dogs. And they're insulting them because they're not late for the things. Happens quite often. Okay, well, but that's the reality of the art world.
They're not that bad, the artists. I mean,
not all of them, but quite a few are.
I think
I have a residency, and every time an artist take off,
yes,
difficulties.
Okay, well, let's use another E word, which I think is quite important, is elitism in the art world. Because in recent years, as prices have gone up, I think in terms of general perception with the public, people have felt the art world more, particularly the commercial art world, more and more remote. Going into a top gallery, even like Ropac, it's a pretty scary experience.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, I'm still terrified of going into Gagosian, a white cube.
You put a sofa in the entrance.
And how long you need to wait to get a prize?
And the thing is that
how many people you need to call to get a prize?
There are no prices anywhere. There's very little explanation on the walls of a top gallery. You are meant to know. It's extremely scary. And then, of course, asking a price.
No, we want to interact.
Absolutely.
We're not a museum.
Well, the thing is that the people who work in these galleries often are quite imposing and terrifying. And
I'm not.
No, you're not. You're not. But you're an exception. But to be taken seriously at top gallery, what is the entry level? How much money have you got to drop to be taken seriously? 100,000?
No, absolutely not.
What do you think? What would you say, Alain?
I would say, I use simple definition. What I call a mega collector buys 25 works a year. Okay, so that's what I would say. So 25, let's say, they don't buy too much at Thaddaeus Ropac, which 100,000 probably on average would be 2.5 million. So, but if you buy less,
absolutely not.
No, of course not, because there's one. But I mean, if you buy 25, you don't buy only at Thaddaeus Ropac, which you should, because it's a fantastic gallery. Okay. And I adore Thaddaeus, who's a remarkable dealer I know for 25 years, and I have enormous respect for him. So there's no doubt. But this is the way we're talking about the reality of the art market. I would say probably $1 million a year to be taken seriously.
But what do you think about the issue of elitism in the art world? Is it different in your region?
I think in average it's more or less the same. But you expect to walk into a gallery in Hong Kong or in China to be more friendly. We talk to people.
And that is the case, is it?
Now I think Hong Kong is getting really bad because they've taken the attitude of a gallery in the West, because you walk in, people would say hello to you. When we first opened, everybody would say, hello, how are you? Nowadays, no. It's changing. It's evolving, learning from the West. It's less friendly. It's more intimidating.
Okay. I
agree.
But I don't think it's the West, sorry, no.
Carry on.
I completely disagree.
But when you walk,
I think it's a question of education. You say hello, good morning. You welcome people. In none of my 22 years of experience, maybe I haven't. I don't know, but it's very important. Also
Try to enter another gallery than yours where you know everyone. But try it, because even me sometimes, if I'm not known, I almost don't visit a gallery, whatever it is, without taking an appointment.
The younger salespeople, we train them to be nice. Clients are very important to a gallery.
Yes,
without clients, without artists, you don't have a gallery.
Pearl, what do you think, Pearl?
When someone comes in, they look at the work, most of the people is sitting inside. Unless someone shows interest, of course the sales come in, and they're very nice. Every of our galleries, we produce very nice. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you walk into the gallery, the reception there is usually, they won't talk to you, it's normal. But I'm saying that when I first opened in Hong Kong or in China, whether you have someone coming in, they get very excited, even people sitting there, and they are really friendly. But now it's all changed, because we adapt to the Western way of, when you come in, we say hello, that's it. They wouldn't go and do extra help. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that when someone's saying that it is interesting, people are not nice, everybody. I think all the
Well, then I think it's a big mistake. Last night I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we were
By the
on
way,
my sofa.
if you think this is boring, you can just ask a question, we can change the subject.
It's exactly that.
Carry on.
She said, when you are in business, you have to look at the longer term. Yes, of course, you can come, I have a key for you want, and this is the price, either you buy it or not. But you are selling in a gallery emotions. You're selling a taste. And when we go back to the market, and before when we went the corridor, I kept saying to Alain and to Pearl, our market has one element that no other market has.
Absolutely.
It's taste.
Okay.
And this is why, going back to last night, yes, of course, you look at Giacometti, it'd be eyed. You look at other things, it'd be eyed. But nobody looked at the George O'Keeffe, had 30 bids on it.
Okay.
So it's all about taste.
We'll get back to that in a moment. But what I would take it...
I wanted to add for the elitism, just to give a viewpoint. The same way, because the problem when we talk about the art world, suddenly we forget about the rest of the outside world. So, of course, there's some kind of elitism in the art world.
I was hoping to get to that eventually.
But we should not forget the Maslow pyramids.
Yeah.
The Maslow pyramid means that to get interested by even your own self-fulfillment about culture or whatever, or even thinking about yourself, you need to have bread on table, you need to have a roof above your head and everything.
But art isn't in that Maslow, but there is no inherent need for art, and that is one of the great problems of the art market.
Except maybe if the Maslow pyramid is about self-fulfillment, which means it's about...
I'm just making one point about when you go into a gallery and the importance of taste and all this. I went into a gallery with my daughter, and we went into Gagosian, actually. I can mention it. And immediately, a sales assistant came up to her because they'd spotted she was wearing a Gucci bag. What they didn't realize was it was knockoff and cost 100 euros. But they brought her a sales sheet. That's what they actually look for when you go into a gallery, what you're wearing, the watch you've got on, the shoes you've got on, the handbag which I found quite sort of hilarious, but quite shocking, because they're looking at how wealthy you are as soon as you walk into the gallery. But now we move on to another point, is that given that the top end of the market is pretty sort of stagnant and not really going anywhere, the funny thing is that the bottom end of the market is actually showing signs of life. And a number of people I talk to, galleries at that end, the sub $50,000 market is actually showing signs of life. Now, has the top end of the art market, in a sense, committed suicide by just concentrating on the super wealthy? Let's go to you, Pearl. What do you think?
I mean, as we just now, we were talking about it, even if you have a 27 billionaires here, it doesn't guarantee that they will sell. The same thing is, you have to cultivate your collector. Doesn't mean that you have a billionaire you will buy. I mean, you cultivate your collector, you have to have them to trust you, to create passion. That is what we are doing. We create passion, we make them understand the artist, we sell knowledge. That's what I always say. We're not selling art, you're selling knowledge. And then your clients will come to you.
Okay. Elena, do you think there's a case for regenerating the market by generating enthusiasm bottom up, by lower priced items, bringing in new collectors? Taste is incredibly important and emotion is incredibly important. Has that been neglected a little bit with people who haven't got super wealth? And do we actually need to cultivate these people more as the market seems to be in a longish term dip?
I don't think the market, God, these are many questions in one. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't think the market is going down. As I said to you before, even though the other sectors are going up and there is a lot of money around, I think people are just more conscious of what they are buying. And the younger artists, I work less with the younger generation. It's not my field of expertise. What I would recommend is the long-term vision of an artist. If I were to be a younger gallery working it, we all been young, Thaddaeus Ropac was a younger gallery 30 years ago, with Baselitz who was 40 years younger. I give the example of Baselitz because I joined 6 months ago, and I saw the last show, and people are complaining, nobody's selling, and I saw the result of 40 years of being steadily behind an artist that was not at the price of today, and got sold, because we're selling knowledge. We are building a legacy for the artist, alive and then afterwards with their foundation, their estate. So going back to your question about the under 15K, yes, but you need to be put in the hands of a capable gallerist that looks at the longer term and not the short-term vision.
Okay. We are in a society that's obsessed with the short term, but that's it. Anna, how do you think things can improve in the market? What should happen?
One of the challenges, kind of a lethal challenge for the art market right now, is the enormous fixed costs that have been built. The size of the galleries, the price of the art fair, the cost of international transport, the price of the real estate, which makes it difficult to get to that point of low price. Because again, practical example, sometimes I go around New York and I see good young artists and I ask, what's the price? Oh, very cheap, 20,000. I said, 20,000 cheap? And I said, you know what? For a young artist, first show in your gallery, this is much too expensive. But I respect the fact that your rent is 10,000 a month. But I say you should not present young artists in Manhattan, because it's impossible. And I say, me as a collector, I should not pay the real estate of New York. So I'd rather go to maybe Madrid, or maybe to, even if Berlin is expensive. But
maybe the gallery needs to be in New York because he's closer to the curators and directors of museums.
Yeah.
Maybe, but then you must choose, and that's what I say. That's the challenge.
How they help
That's the challenge that there is right now, is that either you are very expensive and you sell expensive in an expensive city, but the problem is if you're talking about selling young art at a lower level, then you have a challenge with those fixed costs. And I'm not saying that I know the solution, I just know it's a big problem. Because the fixed cost right now, when I see the sizes, the number of galleries, the fanciness, the number of fancy dinners, even if dinners reduced, as you know. White Cube canceled this party in Art Basel, in Miami, which they did very well, because it's totally useless, because everybody goes, but the collectors, because not a collector would sit there, because they're sitting ducks like, with all the art advisors. I want to see you, I want to see you, I want to see you, I want to get you my cards. So no collectors would ever go to those parties. So they were useless. So, but it's reduced. So
I hear this again and again, that all art is just too expensive at the moment, at pretty well all levels. Would the market be revivified if just prices were cut? Would that encourage activity? Because it is happening at auction, whether people like it or not, it's happening at auction.
And that's the drama, is that right now there's two realities. There's the price you pay in Art Basel, and the price you pay at Christie's.
Yeah. Elena, is there a case for cutting prices? I know you're trying to, well, no, that's the wrong...
No, I'm not trying to...
I do sense in a way that your game might be a little bit of an outlier, but do you think there's a case for cutting prices? Or discounting, discreetly?
Of course you give discounts. No, it depends what you have as a piece of art, but let's not forget it's art. You need to give a value. We give values to everything in our lives, so it has a value. It starts at 15, it starts at 10,
art doesn't have an intrinsic value. It just doesn't.
What do you mean?
It doesn't have an intrinsic value. It's not a commodity. It's not like...
No, it's not a commodity. As I said, and I truly believe it's
all
about
the values are subjective, aren't they?
It's very subjective. So, and that's why it never really changed. When you see the famous UBS report that you were talking about, and 2 days ago at the Bocconi in another conference, they were asking me about it has a value, but everything has a value in life.
Well, Pearl, do you think pricing is a problem?
I don't see prices as if you determine when you give a prize, of course you have to discuss, and the values of an artist is already discussed between their credentials and how they develop. There's a value. And if you have sold this artist of that value, you cannot just lower this is not a stock market, it's not a share price, it's not a product.
Yeah, but the thing is...
No, what was wrong, you know what was wrong, Scott? It was in the last couple, there was this hysteria with the younger artists.
Yeah.
And that really, I read over the summer an article about it, where everybody wanted to buy younger artists. It was like the trend. So they came out of school, they were at 5,000, 10,000, and then within a nanosecond, they were at 100,000, 500,000. I mean, you could get a little drawing from Tintoretto, you know, for 500,000.
That's another
But then you get, and then after 18 months, they went back to no sale at all.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying from the beginning. You need the gallerist, whoever it is, that is there and has a long-term vision and controls it, and not these ups and downs and these poor artists.
I give you one example because I see 5 seconds.
What we need is a question or two. Right, who would like to ask a question?
Ask my example. It's a good example.
Anyone like someone over there? Just in the third row over there.
Hi, it's not the third row. I was going to ask this. What do you think about the Pace Gallery, and I don't know how many galleries are struggling financially. What do you think about the business model with the gallery model is taking 50% and keeping 50%? How artists and how your galleries could develop further business models other than one item, one sale? Like how do you think about the innovation could be maybe collaborations amongst artists, maybe one painting could be a one sculpture, maybe one painting could be also an olfactory component, maybe. How do you think about developing the outdated business model that currently is in the gallery space?
So you're saying that what is problematic is the 50-50, well, it's not always 50, but 50-50 split artists. Okay, well, some quick responses from gallerists?
I would say that, yeah, but strangely enough, I've been critical of galleries, but I can tell you only galleries can provide you the gallery's premium. That's what I call the gallery's premium. If you mean that, let's say that your works cost 1,000 euro to produce. To sell it for 25,000, you need the prestige that the galleries and the whole infrastructure that the galleries pretend to say. Because if you sell it online, you're going to sell it for 2,000. You go to Artsy, you go to Saatchi online, and the whole thing. So unfortunately, There's no alternative to the gallery system.
Okay, well, I'll get a couple of gallerists on this. So what do you think about the 50-50 split? Is that an outmoded model?
Do you want to go?
Okay.
I go.
Yeah.
Quickly.
The split is the support to infrastructure, as Alain said, and also an artist, you have to do marketing, you have to you have to build credentials. I mean, artist's career, without that, then that credentials become supply and demand. It's a product. We have to give values. That is what the 50% is about, because we have to build a career for the artist. It's all long term.
And Elena, final word.
Well, it depends. It can be 50-50, and then the more they're successful, it goes up to even 80-20 for the gallerist.
Absolutely.
But the gallerist has all the costs. And I swear, catalogs, shows in museums, the marketing, the communication that we have to encounter is massive.
Okay.
So it's a teamwork between the artist and the gallerist.
It's a few collaboration.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to wrap it up now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.